The Erebus report, released April 1981, provoked a series of unexpected consequences.
The Royal Commission's report says that the overriding cause of the disaster was Air New Zealand's act in changing the computer track of the aircraft without telling the captain or crew. Justice Mahon says, and I quote, "I am forced reluctantly to say that I had to listen to an orchestrated litany of lies."
The first casualty was Maury Davis, the chief executive of Air New Zealand, who fell on his sword.
I've become the focus point of this. I hope that as a consequence of what I'm about to do, they will be satisfied and leave the company alone. They've got a sacrifice. Let them be content.
The curse of Erebus would also soon lead to the downfall of Justice Peter Mahon himself. Prime Minister Robert Muldoon.
The findings do not accurately appear to be in accord with the evidence. In other words, the evidence does not lead to some of the conclusions that Mr. Justice Mahon arrived at.
Air New Zealand appealed the Mahon findings and the matter was heard by the Court of Appeal. Sir Jim Macleay.
There are people today who will tell you that the Court of Appeal and then the Privy Council overturned Mahon's findings as to the cause of the accident. That is absolutely incorrect. Those findings about the cause of the accident, the responsibility of the airline, responsibility of the Civil Aviation Division, they remain unchallenged.
But what was challenged was Mahon's right to use the term orchestrated litany of lies. While he might call individual witnesses liars, he was not allowed to say they conspired to commit perjury. Sir Ted Thomas, a friend and fellow judge.
Well, he was completely convinced, one, that you couldn't review a Commission of Inquiry finding, that it was beyond judicial review, and two, that they would substantiate his finding. They would not be prepared to say that it was erroneous to say that the Air New Zealand had been guilty of an orchestrated litany of lies. That one literary flourish began all this after the report.
Peter Mahon believed he was right and found himself increasingly offside with the judicial and political establishment. Sir Jim Macleay.
Mahon and Muldoon had exchanged public blows. Mahon proved to be a very worthy self-publicist. He was a good spin doctor, and he argued his case in the public arena very well. And when you consider who his opponent was, remarkably well.
Amid his skirmishes with Muldoon, Mahon offered to resign.
The time had come for him to go. It was just impossible. And he was not showing no signs of letting up. The media lapped up the criticism. And the more coverage he got, it seemed to me, the worse he became. So when Macleay rang me again about this, I suggested that perhaps the time had come to accept Peter's resignation.
Peter Mahon never consulted with his wife Margarita about the resignation, and his decision had huge financial costs for his family.
He went to the phone, and when he came out, he said, I've just rung Davison and said I've resigned. I said, I beg your pardon? I said, no, what words I used? I said, do you think that is wise?
Peter Mahon went on to challenge the Court of Appeal decision by taking the case to the Privy Council in London. But that too went against him. Gary Harrison, now a judge, assisted the Royal Commission.
I think the Privy Council were very kind to the judge in their decision. It has to be remembered that it was only one paragraph of the report that was ever challenged. the judge's findings that the pilot was not in error, and all of his other findings were never challenged.
Losing two actions, the Court of Appeal and then the Privy Council, it was a spectacular fall from grace, and he never recovered from it.
I think of him as a tragic figure. Tragic that it should have ended that way. I'm not satisfied that he wasn't correct. It was just a matter of the language that he used. And to end, for a judge of his standing, because he was a first-rate judge and highly regarded, to end that way was a tragedy.
I'm Garry McAlpine, and this is Erebus Flight 901, Litany of Lies.